Okay, this is your warm-up review for week 13. Again, if your score is below a 70, make sure you watch this video. I know we have a week off, so give it to me Tuesday when we come back from the break. It should be November, November 27th. So turn it in by the 27th. Okay, the first one, you had decimals. Remember, make sure you line up your decimal. And you're just going to add. I like to put a 0 in the place there, so I'm just going to add. Don't forget your decimal. So your answer will be 2 and 246 thousandths. Okay, if you missed number 2, again, you probably did not line up your decimals. Remember that 30 has a decimal at the end, so you need to line it up. Place your decimal there. I would go ahead and annex some zeros. And remember, you are subtracting. So I have to borrow. And that becomes a 10. I have to borrow. That's a 10. I have to borrow. And now I can subtract. 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 4 is 5. Put my decimal. And I only need 1 0 in front there. So my answer is 54 hundredths. Okay, on number 3 was multiplying decimals. You do not have to line it up. You just need to multiply and then bring over your decimal the number places. So 1 times 8 is 8. 8 times 0 is 0. Put a 0 there. 0 times 1 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. So I'm going to add, and I'm going to place my decimal. I'll make sure I put a 0 in front. So my answer to this is 8 thousandths. Okay, on number 4, remember you have to set it up correctly. So the 14 is your divisor. 2 and 8 tenths is your dividend. You have no decimal in your divisor, but you're doing your dividend, so move it up to your quotient. And now you're just going to divide. 14 is not going to 2. 14 will go into 28 2 times. And it terminates, so my answer is 2 tenths. Okay, number 5, you have adding fractions. Now I need to find a common denominator for that. So I put it in my sled, and I'm going to find the least common multiple. Well, the only thing that goes into 5 and 7 is 1. So I'm going to multiply 1 times 5 times 7, and I get a denominator of 35. Now I have to go back. 5 times 7 is 35, so what I do to the bottom, I do to the top, so 2 times 7 is 14. 7 times 5 is 35. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top, so I get 30. Now that I have common denominators, I can add them, and I get 44 35ths. 44 35ths is improper, so I divide it out. 35, we're not going to 4. 35 will go into 44 one time. I subtract. I get 9, and I write it clockwise. So my answer to this problem is 1 and 9 over 35. Okay, number 6 was subtracting, and you're going to have to rename on this one. So this one's a little bit more difficult. But again, I still need a common denominator. So when I put it in my sled, nothing goes into 4 and 3 but 1. So when I multiply 1 times 4 times 3, I get 12. So I'm going to use a denominator of 12. So remember, whatever I do on the bottom, I do to the top. So 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. 2 times 4 is 8. Now, at this point, I am subtracting 3 twelfths minus 8 twelfths. I cannot do that. So I have to borrow from my 3 here, become a 2. I need a fraction that's equal to 1 that I can add to 3 twelfths. So I'm going to use 12 twelfths. Now, since I have 12 twelfths, I can add it to my 3 twelfths. So all of that work becomes 2 and 15 twelfths minus 2 and 8 twelfths. So now when I subtract, I have 15 twelfths minus 8 twelfths. I get 7 twelfths. 2 minus 2 is 0, so my answer is 7 twelfths. Okay, number 7, you're multiplying fractions. I do not need a common denominator. I just multiply. So 7 times 2 is 14. 5 times 3 is 15. The only thing that goes into 14 and 15 is 1. So my answer is 14 fifteenths. Okay, number 8, you're dividing fractions. So you got to remember your KCF. Keep, change, flip. So what that means is I keep the first fraction. I'm going to change division to multiplication, and I'm going to take the reciprocal of the second fraction. Now, if you wanted to, you can simplify first. Most of you guys do not. So I'm just going to multiply. I'm going to get 42 over 50. So I'm going to have to simplify that. I can put it in my sled. What goes into 42 and 50 is 2. 2 goes into 42 21 times. 2 goes into 50 25. The only thing that goes into 21 and 25 is 1. So my answer, 21 over 25, is the correct answer in simplest form. Now, if you wanted to simplify before you multiply, you would get that answer anyways. You're still going to take out that 2, but you're going to do it right here. So 2 goes into 6 3 times. 2 goes into 10 5 times. Now when I multiply, I get the 21 over 25, and it's in simplest form. Okay, number 9 was a word problem. It said Kevin threw the football 19 2/3 yards. Scott threw the football 23 1/3 yards. Which statement is true? And they're asking you who threw the football the farthest. So by just looking at it right now, we know it's going to be Scott. So when I look at my answers, I know I can eliminate A and C because it says Kevin threw it further. So I know my answer is either going to be B or D. So at this point, in order to find out who threw it further, I have to subtract. So I'm going to do 24 1/3 minus 19 2/3. I do have a common denominator here of 3, but again, I cannot subtract 1 minus 2, so I have to borrow. So I'm going to borrow from the 24, make it a 23, and I need a fraction that's equal to 1 that I can add to 1/3, so I'm going to use 3/3. Now I can add that, so I'm going to get 23 4/3 minus 19 2/3. At this point, I can subtract 4 minus 2, which is 2 over 3. I can subtract 23 minus 19, which is 4 2/3. So my answer to this problem is Scott threw it further, the football 4 2/3 yards further than Kevin, which is B. Okay, again, number 10 was a word problem. It says Matt plans on running 5/8 of a mile every day this week, and 1 1/3 every day next week. About how far will he have run by the end of 2 weeks? So it's asking you to estimate, and you really don't have to work it out. So if you wanted to work it out, you could. You would multiply this by 7 over 1. So I know that 8 doesn't go into 3, but 8 will go into 35 4 times. And 4 times 8 is 32, and I get 4 3/8. Now I'm going to go to the next page. I'm going to do the next one, which is 1 1/3, and I'm still going to multiply that by 7. So I do have to change it to an improper. 4/3 times 7 over 1, which is 28 over 3. When I divide it out, I know that 3 will go into 28 9 times, which is 27, which leaves me 1/3 left over. So at this point, I got 9 1/3, and I got 4 3/8. So as I look at that right there, just looking at it, that's almost about 14, maybe a little bit over a half right there. So my answer choices say A, 7 miles, B, 15 miles, C, 18 miles, D, 28. Your answer, the closest estimate would be B, about 15 miles.